A homeless girl finds a millionaire's watch worth more than most people's yearly salary. When she decides to return it, she faces accusations of theft and cruelty from his teenage son. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. The bitter Boston wind cut through Lucy's threadbare jacket like it wasn't even there. She pulled her knees closer to her chest, watching streams of well-dressed people hurry past the doorway where she'd taken shelter. Their designer boots splashed through slush puddles, their faces buried in expensive scarves as they rushed home to warm houses and hot dinners. Lucy's stomach growled, a familiar ache that had been her constant companion since her mother's death 8 months ago. At 12 years old, she'd learned to be invisible. It was safer that way. The social workers who occasionally patrolled these streets meant well, but foster care held its own terrors. She'd heard enough stories from other street kids to know she was better off on her own. The dinner crowd was starting to thin out at La Maison, the fancy French restaurant she'd been watching for the past hour. Soon, the kitchen staff would begin tossing out the day's leftovers. Lucy had learned their schedule over the past few weeks. If she timed it right, she could sometimes snag a half-eaten bread basket or abandon dessert before it hit the dumpster. As the last customers departed, Lucy slipped from her doorway and crept toward the restaurant's back alley. The kitchen door opened, spilling warm light and the tantalizingly rich scent of food into the darkness. Lucy pressed herself against the cold brick wall, waiting for her chance. That's when she saw it, a glint of metal in the shadows near the restaurant's service entrance. At first she thought it might be a coin, but as she drew closer, her breath caught in her throat. It was a watch, and even in the dim light she could tell it was expensive. The kind of expensive she'd only seen in store windows and on the wrists of people who never spared her a glance. With trembling fingers Lucy picked it up. The metal was still warm, as if its owner had just dropped it. The face gleamed with tiny diamonds, and the brand name Patek Philippe was etched in elegant script. She'd heard the older kids talk about watches like this. They were worth more than most people made in a year. Her mind raced with possibilities. She could sell it, maybe to one of the pawn shops in the shadier part of town. They wouldn't ask questions, not if she accepted a fraction of its true worth. It would be enough for food, warm clothes, maybe even a cheap room somewhere until spring. But as she turned the watch over, she saw the inscription on the back. To Thomas, on your 50th, with love, Elizabeth. Someone's precious gift, probably dropped while getting into their car after dinner. Lucy closed her eyes, her mother's voice echoing in her memory. We might not have much, baby, but we've got our dignity. Nobody can take that from you unless you let them. The watch felt heavy in her hand, weighted with more than just precious metal and stones. She could almost hear two voices arguing in her head. One desperate and practical, the other quiet but persistent. The practical voice listed all the ways this watch could change her life, could help her survive the brutal Boston winter ahead. The quiet voice simply asked what her mother would do. A crash from the kitchen made Lucy jump. The staff would be coming out with the trash soon. She had to make a decision. With fingers numb from more than just the cold, she carefully tucked the watch into her deepest pocket, the one she'd sewn extra stitches into to keep her few treasures safe. Tomorrow she would find out who this Thomas was. She'd seen the restaurant's wealthy patrons arrive in their expensive cars, had watched them hand their keys to the valet. Surely someone there would know who had been dining tonight, who might have lost something valuable. As Lucy slipped back into the shadows, leaving the promise of dinner behind, her stomach protested loudly. But there was something else, a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with food. Her mother would have been proud of this choice, and somehow, that felt more filling than any meal could have been. What Lucy couldn't know, as she huddled that night in her hidden corner of an abandoned building, was that this small decision, this choice to honor her mother's memory rather than her own desperate needs, would set in motion events that would transform not only her life but the lives of everyone she was about to meet. The watch ticked softly in her pocket, counting down the moments until everything would change. The Bradford Enterprises building stretched toward the sky like a tower of glass and steel dreams, its windows reflecting the morning sunlight in blinding flashes. Lucy stood across the street, clutching the watch in her pocket, trying to gather her courage. She'd spent the morning asking questions at La Maison, where a sympathetic valet had mentioned that Thomas Bradford had dined there the previous evening. She'd used her last quarter at the public library to look up Bradford Enterprises. The photographs showed a man with kind eyes and silver hair, always wearing an expensive watch. It had to be his. Now, watching people in business attire stream through the building's revolving doors, Lucy felt more out of place than ever. Her reflection in a store window made her wince. She tried her best to clean up in a gas station bathroom, washing her face, attempting to smooth her tangled brown hair. But her clothes told the truth of her situation. The too small jacket with its frayed cuffs, jeans worn thin at the knees, shoes held together with duct tape. Just walk in, she whispered to herself. Give them the watch. Walk out. Simple steps, yet her feet felt frozen to the sidewalk. A well-dressed woman brushed past her, wrinkling her nose. The gesture sparked something in Lucy, a familiar defiance. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was doing the right thing. Squaring her shoulders, she joined the flow of people entering the building. The lobby was a cathedral of wealth, all marble floors and soaring ceilings. A massive security desk dominated the entrance, staffed by 3 guards in crisp uniforms. Lucy approached slowly, one hand still gripping the watch in her pocket. Can I help you? The guard's tone suggested the opposite of assistance. I found something that belongs to Mr. Bradford, Lucy started, her voice smaller than she'd intended. His watch. From last night. The guard's expression shifted from dismissive to suspicious. Wait here. Lucy stood rooted to the spot as the guard made a phone call, very aware of the curious glances from passing employees. Minutes stretched like hours until the elevator doors opened, and a young man strode out. He was maybe 17, wearing an expensive suit that somehow made him look both older and more boyish at the same time. His features might have been handsome if they weren't twisted into a scowl. This is the one? He asked the guard, looking at Lucy as if she were something unpleasant stuck to his shoe. Yes, Mr. Bradford. She claims to have your father's watch. Nathan Bradford, she realized this must be Thomas Bradford's son, crossed his arms. Really? And how exactly did you find my father's $20,000 watch? The number made Lucy's knees weak. She could have bought a house in some parts of the city for that much money. It was outside La Maison restaurant. Last night. La Maison. Nathan's laugh was sharp. You expect us to believe you were at La Maison? What were you doing there, dumpster diving? Lucy felt heat rise in her cheeks because it was exactly what she'd been doing. But she forced herself to meet his gaze. The inscription, she said. On the back. It's from Elizabeth for his 50th birthday. Something dangerous flashed in Nathan's eyes. So you've had time to examine your stolen goods thoroughly. He nodded to the guards. Call the police. No. Lucy pulled the watch from her pocket, holding it out. I'm trying to return it. Please, I didn't steal anything. Grab her. Nathan ordered. Don't let her leave. 2 guards moved with surprising speed, each taking one of Lucy's arms. The watch clattered to the marble floor, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent lobby. Faces turned to stare, some curious, some disgusted, a few sympathetic. Lucy felt tears burning in her eyes but refused to let them fall. Check her pockets, Nathan commanded. I bet she has more stolen property. I'm not a thief. Lucy's voice cracked as the guards began roughly patting her down. Her mother's locket, her only real possession, was pulled from her pocket and handed to Nathan. What's this? More jewelry you found? He turned the tarnished locket over in his manicured hands. That's mine. It was my mother's. Please don't. Lucy struggled against the guard's grip as Nathan began to pry at the locket's clasp. Nathan. The voice cut through the lobby like a thunderclap. What the hell is going on here? Everyone turned to see Thomas Bradford himself standing by the elevators, his face a storm of confusion and anger. He looked exactly like his photographs, though his kind eyes now blazed with authority. Father, Nathan straightened, still holding Lucy's locket. We caught this street rat trying to sell us your stolen watch. My watch. Thomas crossed the lobby in long strides, bending to pick up the Patek Philippe from where it had fallen. The one I was turning the entire house upside down looking for this morning? He examined it carefully, then looked at Lucy, still held firmly by the guards. You found this. Lucy nodded, not trusting her voice. Release her, Thomas ordered. Now. The guard stepped back immediately. Lucy rubbed her sore arms, fighting to keep her composure as Thomas Bradford approached her. He held out her mother's locket. I believe this belongs to you, he said softly, his eyes seeing far more than Lucy was comfortable with. Now, why don't you tell me exactly how you came to find my watch? Thomas Bradford's private office felt larger than the entire abandoned building where Lucy had been sleeping. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Boston Harbor, but Lucy couldn't appreciate it. She sat perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than she'd ever seen in her life, her hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate that a concerned secretary had pressed into them. You walked around all night with a $20,000 watch in your pocket, Thomas said, not as a question but as if trying to understand something. Just to return it? Lucy stared into her hot chocolate. I couldn't sell it. The inscription. She swallowed hard. It was a gift from someone who loved you. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying her with those piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. Elizabeth, my late wife. She gave me that watch 5 years ago, just months before. He trailed off, then cleared his throat. Nathan was 12 when we lost her. Your age. The mention of Nathan made Lucy tense. He stood by the window, radiating hostility. She's playing you, Dad. This whole innocent act is no act, Thomas cut him off sharply. The watch was reported missing this morning. The police report shows it happened at La Maison around 8:45 p.m. when I was getting into my car. This young lady had every opportunity to disappear with it. Instead, she spent her time tracking down its owner. Great, she did the right thing. Give her a reward and let's be done with it. Nathan's voice dripped with disdain. Lucy set the mug down with trembling hands. I don't want a reward. I should go. Where? Thomas asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Lucy opened her mouth, then closed it again. The truth was she had nowhere to go. Winter was settling in early this year. Last night's temperatures had nearly frozen her despite finding shelter. That's what I thought. Thomas stood, walking to his desk. Lucy, I'd like to make you an offer. Dad, no. Nathan. Just one word, but it carried enough authority to silence his son. Lucy, our house has several empty guest rooms. I'd like you to stay with us at least until we can figure out a more permanent solution. Lucy's heart hammered against her ribs. I can't. You can and you should, Thomas said firmly. You're 12 years old. You shouldn't be on the streets. The streets are safer than some places, Lucy whispered, thinking of the horror stories she'd heard about certain foster homes. Understanding flickered across Thomas's face. I'm not talking about the foster system. I'm talking about a safe place to sleep, regular meals, and a chance to get back into school. No strings attached. If at any point you want to leave, the door will be open. This is insane. Nathan exploded. You can't just bring a stranger into our home. What about security? What about basic human decency? Thomas countered. Your mother would have. Don't. Nathan's voice cracked. Don't you dare use Mom to justify this. Lucy stood abruptly. Please, I don't want to cause problems. I'll go. Sit down, Lucy. Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. Nathan, you're right about one thing. This is a significant decision that affects our household. But I've made up my mind. He turned back to Lucy. The offer stands. What do you say? Lucy's mind raced. Every instinct honed by months on the street screamed at her to run. But something in Thomas Bradford's eyes reminded her of her mother. That same mix of kindness and quiet strength. And the promise of warmth, of food, of safety. I could try, she heard herself say. For a little while. Thomas smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. Excellent. Mrs. Chen, our housekeeper, will help you get settled. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Sarah, please ask Mrs. Chen to come up. Nathan pushed away from the window. This is a mistake. When something goes missing. Nothing will go missing, Lucy interrupted, finding her voice. I'm not a thief. I never was. We'll see, Nathan sneered, yanking the office door open and storming out. A tiny Chinese woman appeared in the doorway, her neat uniform and practical shoes marking her as household staff. Her eyes widened slightly at Lucy's appearance but showed no other reaction. Mrs. Chen, this is Lucy. She'll be staying with us for a while. Could you help her get settled in the blue guest room? And perhaps find her some clean clothes? Of course, Mr. Bradford. Mrs. Chen's voice was accented but warm. Come with me, child. As Lucy followed Mrs. Chen out, she heard whispers from the office staff, saw the mixture of curiosity and judgment in their eyes. But Thomas's voice followed her too. Lucy? Thank you for returning my watch. Elizabeth would have been very pleased by your honesty. Somehow, those words made her stand a little straighter as she walked toward her uncertain future. Behind her, she could hear Nathan's voice raised in continued protest, but Thomas Bradford's decision seemed final. For better or worse, Lucy was about to enter a world she'd only ever seen from the outside, a world where people wore $20,000 watches and lived in houses with blue guest rooms. She touched her mother's locket for courage and stepped into the elevator, leaving the street behind. For now. The Bradford mansion's blue guest room was larger than any place Lucy had ever called home. The bed was soft enough to swallow her whole, and the adjoining bathroom had more knobs and settings than she knew what to do with. But after 3 days she still slept on the floor wrapped in a single blanket. Old habits died hard, and the streets had taught her to always be ready to run. It was dawn when the first accident happened. Lucy was heading down to the kitchen. She liked to help Mrs. Chen with breakfast preparation, partly because it made her feel useful and partly because she still couldn't quite believe there would always be food available. As she reached for the stair railing, her hand slipped on something slick. Only her quick reflexes, honed by months of navigating treacherous alleys, kept her from tumbling down the marble staircase. "Oh dear, how clumsy," Nathan's voice drifted from above. "Someone must have waxed the railing yesterday. Good thing you caught yourself. Those stairs could be dangerous." Lucy wiped the excess furniture polish from her hand without comment. She'd learned that engaging with Nathan only encouraged him. Instead, she continued to the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen was already preparing coffee for Thomas's morning meeting. "Good morning, Lucy," the housekeeper smiled warmly. "Would you like to learn how Mr. Bradford takes his coffee?" But before Lucy could answer, Nathan appeared. "I'll do it," he announced. "Dad's particular about his coffee. We wouldn't want any mistakes." Lucy watched as he prepared the coffee with practiced movements, noting how Mrs. Chen's smile became fixed and professional. The kitchen had been her sanctuary these past few days, but Nathan was systematically invading every safe space she found. Later that morning, Thomas departed for a 3-day business trip to Chicago. "Be good, both of you," he said, hugging Nathan and giving Lucy a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Mrs. Chen is in charge." Lucy's heart sank as she watched the car pull away. Thomas's presence had kept Nathan's hostility in check, but now, the changes were subtle at first. Her clean clothes disappeared from the laundry, only to be found wadded up behind the dryer. Her schoolwork, Thomas had arranged for a tutor to help her catch up, kept getting accidentally knocked into the pool. Small things went missing from various rooms whenever Lucy was nearby. "I noticed my silver letter opener is missing from the study," Nathan mentioned casually at dinner 2 days into Thomas's absence. "The one that was a gift from Senator Wilson." Mrs. Chen frowned. "I polished it this morning. It's on your father's desk." "Oh." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "My mistake. Though things do seem to have a way of disappearing lately." The whispers among the staff grew louder. Lucy caught fragments. "Can't trust street people," and "just a matter of time." Even those who had been kind to her began watching her with wary eyes. That night, unable to sleep on her floor nest, Lucy wandered to the mansion's library. Books had been her escape during long days at the public library, back when she'd first found herself alone. She was surprised to find the lights on and voices drifting from inside. "Background check complete, sir," a man was saying. As expected, her story checks out. Mother deceased 8 months ago, no father in the picture. Foster placement failed due to overcrowding. She's been on the streets since then. "Keep digging," Nathan's voice replied. "There has to be something, drug use, theft charges, something we can use to show Dad what a mistake this is." Lucy's hands curled into fists. She'd never stolen anything, never touched drugs. Her mother had worked too hard, sacrificed too much for Lucy to throw her life away like that. But now, standing in this mansion in borrowed clothes, she felt more alone than she had on the streets. The next morning Lucy woke to chaos. Nathan's expensive watch, not his father's returned one, but his own Rolex, was missing. Security guards were called, and Lucy watched as they searched her room, finding nothing. But the damage was done. Even Mrs. Chen's smile seemed uncertain now. "I didn't take it," Lucy said quietly when the search was complete. "Of course not," Nathan replied loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just like you didn't take anything else, right? How convenient that nothing can ever be proved." Lucy retreated to her room but not to cry. She'd learned long ago that tears solved nothing. Instead she began to watch and wait. The streets had taught her patience, taught her to observe. Nathan might be playing a sophisticated game, but Lucy had survived by her wits for months. That evening she noticed something odd about Nathan's friend Marcus, who'd been visiting frequently since Thomas left. His sleeve caught the light strangely as he left after dinner. During their goodbye, she glimpsed Nathan passing him something that glinted gold. Lucy smiled grimly. She knew a setup when she saw one. The streets had taught her about desperation, about the lengths people would go to protect what they saw as theirs. Nathan might have wealth and education on his side, but Lucy had something he didn't expect, the ability to see through people's masks, because her survival had once depended on it. Tomorrow Thomas would return. Lucy just had to survive one more night in this beautiful cage, where every comfort came with strings attached, and every kindness hid potential betrayal. She touched her mother's locket, drawing strength from it as she had so many times before. "I won't run," she whispered to herself. "Not this time." Because for the first time since her mother's death, Lucy had found something worth fighting for. Not just survival but the chance at a real life. And if Nathan thought his privileged upbringing made him better at playing games, he was about to learn what real determination looked like. The kitchen was chaos. Steam billowed from pots, timers beeped incessantly, and Mrs. Peterson, the elderly cook, moved between stations with increasing panic. The annual Bradford Foundation dinner was hours away, and her assistant had called in sick. Lucy watched from the doorway, remembering how her mother had taught her to cook in their tiny apartment kitchen. Without a word, she slipped on an apron and began chopping vegetables. "Oh no, dear," Mrs. Peterson protested. "This isn't your job." "My mom always said extra hands make light work," Lucy replied, her knife moving with practiced precision. "Just tell me what you need." Relief flooded the cook's weathered face. Together they worked in comfortable rhythm, Lucy chopping, stirring, and plating while Mrs. Peterson orchestrated the complex dance of courses. When Thomas stopped by to check on preparations, he found them laughing over a shared taste test. "Everything under control?" he asked, smiling at the unexpected scene. "Thanks to your Lucy," Mrs. Peterson beamed. "She has quite the culinary instinct." Lucy blushed at the possessive "your," but Thomas's approving nod made something warm bloom in her chest. Later that week, Lucy was reading in the garden, a habit she developed since discovering the mansion's library, when she heard frustrated muttering. Miguel, the gardener's 10-year-old son, sat cross-legged behind a hedge, struggling with a book. "Would you like some help?" Lucy asked softly, remembering her own difficulties when she'd first learned to read. Miguel jumped, embarrassed. I'm supposed to read this for school, but the letters dance around sometimes?" Lucy sat beside him. "That happened to me too. My mom taught me some tricks." For the next hour, Lucy patiently helped Miguel sound out words, showing him how to break them into manageable pieces. They were so absorbed that neither noticed Emily, Nathan's girlfriend, watching from the terrace above. "You're good with him," Emily commented later, finding Lucy in the library. "Miguel's dyslexia makes school hard for him." Lucy shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn." Emily settled into a nearby chair, her designer clothes contrasting sharply with Lucy's donated ones. "Nathan says you're dangerous. That you're manipulating everyone. Is that what you think?" Lucy met her gaze steadily. "I think." Emily paused, considering. "I think someone who takes time to teach a gardener's son to read isn't the person Nathan describes." The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Chen's arrival. "Lucy, could you help me with the linens? These old hands aren't as strong as they used to be." "Of course." Lucy rose immediately, grateful for the escape. But Emily's thoughtful gaze followed her. Over the next few weeks, she noticed more. Lucy carrying groceries for the elderly housekeeper, teaching the maid's children simple card tricks during their lunch breaks, leaving flowers from the garden on Mrs. Peterson's kitchen counter. "They're staff, not your friends," Nathan snapped when he caught Lucy sharing cookies with the security guard's daughter. "They're people," Lucy replied quietly. "Just like me." The comment haunted Emily, especially when she observed Nathan's increasing hostility. The final straw came during a formal dinner party. One of the maids, carrying a heavy tray of champagne glasses, tripped on what looked suspiciously like Nathan's deliberately extended foot. Lucy moved with street-honed reflexes, catching the tray before it could crash. Only a few drops spilled, crisis averted. "Thank you," the maid whispered, trembling. "No problem," Lucy smiled, helping her rearrange the glasses. "We all stumble sometimes." Later, Emily confronted Nathan in his father's study. "Did you trip Sandra on purpose?" "Please," Nathan scoffed. "Like I'd waste my time?" "Stop lying." Emily's voice rose. "I've watched you trying to sabotage Lucy for weeks. The missing watch. The accidents. This isn't you, Nathan. Or at least, I thought it wasn't." "You don't understand," Nathan ran his hands through his hair. "She doesn't belong here. She's not one of us." "One of us." Emily stepped back. "The Nathan I fell in love with would never be this cruel. Your mother built the Bradford Foundation to help people like Lucy. What would she think of how you're acting?" "Don't talk about my mother." Nathan's face flushed. "You have no right." "Maybe not," Emily's voice cooled. "But I have the right to choose who I want to be with. And right now, I don't even recognize you." She left Nathan standing in the study, his reflection fractured in the window glass. Outside, she passed Lucy teaching Miguel another reading lesson, their heads bent together over a book in the fading sunlight. "Your mom would be proud," Emily heard Miguel say. "You're a good teacher." Lucy's smile was soft and sad. "I hope so. She always said kindness matters more than anything." Emily watched them for a moment longer, then pulled out her phone. The text to Nathan was brief: "We need to talk about us." Inside the house, Thomas Bradford stood at his study window, observing the scene below. He'd seen everything over the past weeks: Lucy's small kindnesses, Nathan's growing cruelty, the way the household was slowly but surely being forced to choose sides. "Oh, Elizabeth," he murmured to his late wife's portrait. "I wish you were here to help them both heal." But as he watched Lucy patiently guiding Miguel through another difficult passage, Thomas felt a glimmer of hope. Sometimes the greatest changes came not from grand gestures, but from small acts of kindness, offered freely and without expectation of return. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the mansion's hallways. Lucy froze, her hand still raised to knock on Nathan's door. She'd come to return his calculus textbook. He'd accused her of stealing it earlier, only for Mrs. Chen to find it in the library. "She ruins everything." Nathan's voice carried through the thick wood. Something else crashed. "First Dad, then you. I'm not letting you blame Lucy for this." Emily's voice was steel-wrapped silk. "You ruined us all by yourself, Nathan Bradford." Lucy backed away slowly, but not before hearing Emily's parting words: "Call me when you remember who you used to be." The mansion felt different after Emily left. Nathan's hostility, once carefully hidden from his father, began to surface in broader daylight. Lucy's mother's locket vanished from her nightstand, only to reappear 3 days later in the kitchen garbage disposal. Only Lucy's habit of checking the disposal before running it, a paranoid quirk from her street days, saved the precious memento. "Just be patient," Thomas advised when Lucy finally confided in him about the missing locket. "Nathan's hurting. He'll come around." But Thomas didn't see everything. He didn't see how Lucy's homework repeatedly disappeared before her tutor arrived, making her appear unprepared and lazy. He didn't hear the whispered conversations between Nathan and his remaining friends, plotting ways to prove she was a thief. One morning, Lucy found her few photographs of her mother shredded in the garden. As she knelt in the dirt, trying to piece together her mother's smile, she heard Nathan and his friend Marcus talking on the terrace above. "The security footage was useless," Marcus was saying. "She's too careful." "Then we'll have to give her a push," Nathan replied. "Dad's hosting the charity gala next week. Half of Boston's elite will be here, wearing enough jewelry to tempt any street rat." "You really think she'll steal something?" "She won't have to. We just need to make it look like she did." Lucy's hands trembled as she gathered the torn photographs. The streets had taught her to recognize when a situation was about to explode. But where could she go? The winter nights were getting colder, and her old survival spots would be taken by other homeless kids by now. That afternoon, a letter arrived for Thomas. Lucy, helping Mrs. Chin sort the mail, noticed the unusual envelope: no return address, the Bradford name spelled out in letters cut from magazines. Thomas was in meetings all day, so the letter sat unopened on his desk until evening. When he finally read it at dinner, his face went pale. "Nathan, Lucy, I need you both to listen carefully," he said, setting the letter down. "We've received a threat. Someone is apparently planning to target our family during next week's gala." Nathan's fork clattered against his plate. "What kind of threat?" "They claim to have inside information about our security systems. They're demanding money, or they'll ensure the gala ends in tragedy." Lucy saw something flicker across Nathan's face. Fear, yes, but also calculation. She'd learned to read people's expressions on the street, where missing a subtle cue could mean the difference between safety and danger. Nathan was already figuring out how to use this situation against her. Sure enough, later that night she overheard him on the phone. Perfect timing. A street kid with inside knowledge of the house? "Dad will have to see the truth when things go missing during the gala." Lucy retreated to her room, mind racing. The threat was real. She recognized the technique from street gangs who'd target wealthy homes. But if she warned Thomas, would he believe her? And even if he did, Nathan would twist it to make her look guilty of collaborating with the criminals. She pulled out her mother's locket, rescued from the garbage disposal, and clicked it open. The tiny photograph inside showed her mother laughing, caught in a moment of pure joy before illness stole her away. "What should I do, Mom?" she whispered. The streets beckoned through her window, dangerous but familiar. She knew how to survive out there. In here, she was fighting a battle she didn't know how to win, against an opponent who had every advantage except truth. But as she touched the locket's smooth surface, she remembered something her mother used to say: running away is easy. Standing your ground, that takes real courage. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Mrs. Chen carrying a cup of chamomile tea. You look troubled, child. Lucy accepted the tea, its warmth seeping into her cold hands. Mrs. Chen, how do you fight someone who has all the power? The elderly housekeeper sat on the edge of Lucy's bed. Power comes in many forms, little one. Sometimes the greatest power is simply refusing to become what others believe you to be. Lucy sipped her tea thinking. Nathan wanted her to run. It would prove every assumption he'd made about her. But maybe, just maybe, staying was the stronger choice. Not just for herself, but for Thomas, who'd given her a chance when no one else would. For Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Peterson, and Miguel, who'd shown her kindness without judgment. Even for Nathan, who'd forgotten who he used to be. The gala was 6 days away. Lucy had nowhere to go, everything to lose, and a decision to make. The easy path led back to the streets. The harder path led through whatever storm Nathan was brewing. She closed the locket with a soft click. Her mother hadn't raised her to take the easy path. The evening air had a bitter edge, but Nathan barely noticed as he ran his usual route through the quiet streets of Beacon Hill. Running was his escape, the only time his mind cleared of the chaos he'd created. Emily's words still haunted him, mixing with memories of his mother's disappointment and his rare moments of cruelty as a child. From the shadows half a block behind, Lucy tracked his movement. She'd been following his evening runs for days, noting how he always took the same path, always ran alone, always wore his expensive running gear and wireless earbuds that blocked out the world around him. Her street instincts screamed that he was making himself a target. She almost missed the subtle shift in the shadows ahead, 3 figures detaching from a doorway, their movements carrying the predatory grace she recognized from her time on the streets. One of them pulled something from his jacket that caught the streetlight's gleam. A knife. Lucy's heart raced. She could turn around, pretend she never saw what was about to happen. After everything Nathan had done to her, wouldn't that be justice? But her feet were already moving, her mother's voice echoing in her head. The true test of character is how you treat those who've wronged you. Nathan, lost in his thoughts and his music, didn't notice the danger until it was too late. The first man stepped directly into his path, forcing him to stop. The second and third emerged from behind, boxing him in. Nice watch, the first man said, gesturing with the knife. Hand it over, rich boy. Nathan reached for his earbuds, his face shifting from annoyance to fear as he processed the situation. Look, just take it. The phone too, the second man moved closer. And that fancy ring. Lucy could see Nathan's hand trembling as he reached for his father's signet ring. She knew that look in the attacker's eyes. They wouldn't be satisfied with just robbery. They'd been watching him, planning this, their anger at his obvious wealth building into something darker. She had seconds to make a decision. Direct confrontation would be suicide. But the streets had taught her other ways to fight. Lucy picked up a broken bottle from the gutter and hurled it down the street behind the attackers. The crash echoed like a gunshot in the quiet night. 2 of the men turned instinctively toward the noise. Police. Lucy screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice bouncing off the buildings. Over here. The distraction was enough. Nathan broke free, but instead of running straight down the street, the obvious escape route, he moved sideways into the shadows. Lucy's heart leaped. He wasn't completely helpless. But the man with the knife was faster. He lunged, blade flashing. Lucy burst from her hiding spot, all pretense of stealth forgotten. She'd learned on the streets that sometimes the best defense was pure, shocking aggression. Get away from him, she charged forward, her smaller size making her voice seem to come from everywhere at once in the narrow street. She'd survived by making herself seem bigger, more dangerous than she was. The knife wielder spun toward her new threat. Nathan seized the opportunity to slam his elbow into one attacker's face, sending him staggering. But the third man pulled out a gun. Lucy saw the weapon and did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself forward, knocking Nathan aside as the gun went off. Pain exploded in her shoulder, but her momentum carried them both behind a parked car. Run, she gasped, pushing Nathan toward the corner. I'll distract them. Are you crazy? Nathan's eyes were wide with shock. You're bleeding. Sirens wailed in the distance, a coincidence but perfect timing. The attackers fled, leaving Lucy and Nathan huddled behind the car. Why? Nathan's voice shook as he pulled off his running jacket, pressing it against her wound. Why would you help me? After everything I've done. Lucy's vision was starting to blur, but she forced herself to focus on his face. Because it was right. Because your dad believed in me when no one else would. Because. She coughed, tasting copper. Because your mom would have wanted you to be better than this. Don't, Nathan's voice cracked. Don't you dare die trying to teach me a lesson about prejudice. Lucy managed a weak smile. Not planning to die. Street kids are tough, remember? The sirens grew closer. Nathan cradled her against his chest, his expensive running clothes soaking up her blood. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Lucy, I'm so sorry. Please hold on. Through the growing darkness, Lucy saw tears on Nathan's face. Not the angry tears of a spoiled boy denied his way, but the desperate tears of someone confronting the cost of their own prejudice. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that forgiveness was possible, that people could change. But the words wouldn't come. The last thing she heard before consciousness slipped away was Nathan's voice, raw with emotion, calling her name. Not street rat, or that girl, but Lucy. Finally he saw her as a person. She just hoped she'd live long enough to see what kind of person Nathan would choose to become. The private hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Lucy lay propped up against white pillows, her shoulder heavily bandaged, while Nathan sat in the visitor's chair he hadn't left for hours. Thomas had gone to get coffee, but his son barely noticed his absence. You should get some sleep, Lucy said softly. I'm not going anywhere. That's what Mom said. The words escaped before Nathan could stop them. He looked away, but not before Lucy caught the flash of raw pain in his eyes. Tell me about her? Lucy's voice was gentle, free of judgment. Nathan's hands clenched in his lap. She was everything. Always laughing, always helping people. The foundation was her idea. She believed everyone deserved a chance at a better life. He swallowed hard. The cancer took her so fast. One day she was planning Christmas and then she was gone, Lucy finished quietly. Like nothing you do can change it, no matter how much you want to. Nathan looked up, really seeing her for the first time. Your mom? Lucy nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. 8 months ago. Pneumonia, but really it was working 3 jobs that killed her. No health insurance, no savings. I came home from school and found her. She took a shaky breath. Sometimes I still expect to hear her laugh. Does it ever stop hurting? No. But maybe it's not supposed to. Lucy touched her mother's locket, now hanging safely around her neck. The pain reminds us they were real, that they mattered. Thomas returned with coffee, pausing in the doorway as he sensed the shift in atmosphere. He watched his son lean forward, voice rough with emotion. I blamed you, Nathan admitted. Not just you. Everyone Dad tried to help after Mom died. It felt like he was trying to replace her legacy with new projects, new people. Every time he reached out to someone, I saw it as a betrayal. And I reminded you of her? Lucy asked softly. God, yes. Nathan ran his hands through his hair. The way you help people without thinking, how you connect with everyone in the house. It was like seeing her ghost. I couldn't handle it. Thomas stepped into the room, setting the coffee aside. Your mother would be proud of Lucy, he said quietly. Just as she'd be proud of you for finally opening up, son. Nathan's shoulders shook. How can you say that? After how I've acted. I nearly got Lucy killed because I was too wrapped up in my own pain to see what was right in front of me. But you're seeing now, Lucy said. That's what matters. Tell them about the night your mother died, Thomas encouraged gently. The whole story. Nathan looked at his father in surprise, then back to Lucy. I was supposed to be home that night. Mom was having a bad day, but I was angry about some stupid school thing. I went to a friend's house instead. His voice cracked. When we got the call that she'd taken a turn for the worse, by the time I got to the hospital, you never got to say goodbye, Lucy finished. You never got to tell her you were sorry. Nathan nodded, tears falling freely now. After that, it was easier to push people away. If you don't let anyone in, they can't leave you, Lucy said. I get it. Why do you think I slept on the floor in that beautiful room? The streets teach you not to get too comfortable, not to trust anything good. Thomas pulled another chair close, forming a small circle with them. But that's no way to live. Elizabeth, your mother, understood that. It's why she started the foundation. She believed that healing happens when we open ourselves to others, even knowing we might get hurt. I was so awful to you, Nathan said to Lucy. All those things I did were because you were hurting, Lucy replied. I understand pain, Nathan. The streets are full of it. But you know what my mom taught me? Pain can make you bitter or it can make you better. It's a choice. How can you forgive me so easily? Lucy smiled sadly. Because I saw myself in you too. That anger, that fear of letting people in. I've been fighting the same battle. Maybe we're not so different after all. Thomas watched as understanding passed between them, two wounded souls recognizing themselves in each other. Your mothers would have liked each other, he said softly. Mom would have adopted Lucy on the spot. Nathan managed a watery laugh. My mom would have made her famous hot chocolate and talked about books for hours, Lucy added, her own eyes bright with tears. Then maybe, Thomas suggested, the best way to honor them both is to become the people they believed you could be. Lucy reached out her good hand. After a moment's hesitation, Nathan took it. I can't change what I did, he said quietly. No, Lucy agreed. But you can change what you do next. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over Boston. Thomas watched his son and the brave girl who'd saved more than just his life, seeing the first fragile bridges being built between their broken places. Elizabeth would have called it a miracle, he thought. But then she always believed in the healing power of honest hearts. Tell me again how you survived winter on the streets. Nathan asked, his pen poised over a notebook. They sat in the mansion's sunroom, Lucy curled in an armchair while Nathan worked on his speech for the Phillips Academy Student Council. Lucy adjusted her arm sling thoughtfully. The public library was the safest during the day, warm, free, and nobody bothered you if you were quiet and clean. At night, the emergency room waiting area was good, but you had to move every few hours so security wouldn't catch on. Nathan scribbled furiously. And food. Some restaurants would give away unsold food at closing. Church kitchens on weekends. But the hardest part wasn't finding food, it was finding a safe place to eat it. Other homeless kids would steal from you if they could. Nathan paused, looking up. Like I assumed you would steal from us. Hey, Lucy tossed a cushion at him with her good arm. We agreed, no more guilt. Use that energy for your presentation instead. Their easy banter still surprised the household staff. Mrs. Chin often paused in her duties, watching them with a gentle smile as they did homework together or argued playfully over the last cookie. The change in Nathan was particularly striking. Gone was the angry young man who'd terrorized Lucy just weeks ago. One afternoon, Thomas found them in his study, surrounded by foundation documents. The outreach programs are good, Lucy was saying, but they're missing something crucial. See how they're all scheduled during normal business hours? Most homeless kids can't risk being seen during the day. That's when they're searching for food or trying to earn money. Nathan nodded thoughtfully. So we should add evening programs? Maybe partner with the libraries you mentioned? Exactly. And having someone they can relate to matters. When you're on the streets, it's hard to trust people in suits telling you they want to help. Thomas cleared his throat, making them jump. I believe the Foundation's board meets next week. Would you both like to present these ideas? Lucy's eyes widened. Oh no, I couldn't. You absolutely could, Nathan interrupted. Lucy, you understand this better than anyone. Besides, he grinned, you faced down armed robbers. The board should be easy. That was another change, Nathan's newfound ability to joke about the attack, transforming it from a source of shame into a catalyst for growth. His nightmares about that night had largely subsided, though Lucy occasionally heard him pacing in the early hours. On those nights, she'd make 2 cups of hot chocolate, her mother's recipe, and they'd talk until dawn. Did you know, Nathan confided during one such session, that Emily called yesterday? Lucy blew on her hot chocolate. Oh, and? She wanted to get back together. He stared into his mug. I told her I needed more time. That I'm still figuring out who I am without all that anger. Your mom would be proud of that decision, Lucy said softly. Yeah. Nathan smiled. Your mom would be proud of how you've helped me understand, well, everything. Their shared loss became a bridge instead of a barrier. Lucy taught Nathan about survival, resilience, and seeing beyond surface judgments. Nathan helped Lucy navigate the complexities of their privileged world, standing up for her when some of his old friends made snide comments about her background. The transformation wasn't always smooth. Lucy still had moments of feeling overwhelmed by the mansion's luxury, while Nathan sometimes caught himself slipping into old prejudices. But they learned to call each other out gently, to listen without defensiveness, to grow through their mistakes. One Saturday, Thomas came home to find them teaching the staff's children how to play basketball in the mansion's indoor court. Nathan was demonstrating proper shooting form to Miguel, while Lucy coached the security guard's daughter on dribbling. They're good with the kids, Mrs. Chin said, appearing at Thomas's side. Different strengths, but they balance each other. Indeed, where Nathan brought patience and technical knowledge, Lucy added street-smart creativity and the ability to make each child feel seen. Together, they created an atmosphere of inclusion that transformed the mansion's social dynamics. The change rippled outward. Nathan's classmates at Phillips Academy, initially skeptical of his newfound passion for homeless advocacy, began volunteering at shelters. Lucy, attending her tutoring sessions with renewed confidence, started mentoring other kids who were struggling to catch up academically. "You know what's weird?" Lucy said one evening as they worked on college brochures. "Nathan for next year, Lucy planning ahead. I used to think having a home meant 4 walls and a roof. But it's not that at all, is it?" Nathan looked up from his essay drafts. "What is it then?" "It's having people who see you for who you are. Who challenge you to be better but love you even when you mess up." "Like siblings?" Nathan suggested, trying to sound casual. Lucy threw another cushion at him. "Yeah, like incredibly annoying older siblings who hog the bathroom. Hey, perfection takes time." Their laughter echoed through the mansion, mingling with the sounds of life. Mrs. Peterson singing in the kitchen, Miguel practicing his reading aloud in the garden, Mrs. Chin humming as she arranged flowers. The house that had once felt like a museum, frozen in grief after Elizabeth's death, was coming alive again. Thomas, passing by the study door, heard Lucy explaining privilege to Nathan. "It's not about feeling guilty for what you have. It's about using those advantages to help others up." "Like you helped me up?" Nathan replied softly. "When I was at my worst?" "Like we help each other," Lucy corrected. "Every single day." Thomas smiled, remembering Elizabeth's words from long ago. "A house is built of bricks and beams. A home is built of hopes and dreams." Looking at the two teenagers, one born to wealth, one forged by hardship, both learning to be better through each other, he knew she would have loved seeing her hopes and dreams finally fulfilled. The morning of Lucy's high school graduation dawned bright and clear. She stood before her bedroom mirror, no longer sleeping on the floor but comfortable in the space that had become truly hers over the past 5 years. Photos lined her walls. Her mother's smile preserved in cherished snapshots, newer images of her life with the Bradfords, newspaper clippings about their youth foundation's success. "You decent." Nathan's voice called through the door. Now 22 and home from his senior year at Yale, he'd grown from an angry teenager into a thoughtful young man. "Come in." Lucy adjusted her graduation robe, fighting with the honor cords that kept tangling. Nathan appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a sharp suit. "Here, let me help." His fingers deftly straightened the cords. "Valedictorian looks good on you, sis." The word no longer felt strange. Somewhere between late-night conversations and shared dreams, between teaching him empathy and him teaching her to trust, they'd built something real. The adoption papers had just made official what their hearts already knew. "Is Dad crying again?" Lucy asked, smoothing her dress. "Obviously. He's been a mess since your acceptance letter from Harvard arrived." Nathan grinned. "Though I think today's tears might be about something else. He's been acting mysterious all morning." Before Lucy could question this, Thomas appeared in the doorway. He looked distinguished as always in his tailored suit, though his eyes were suspiciously red. "Could I have a moment with Lucy?" he asked. Nathan squeezed Lucy's shoulder. "I'll go make sure Mrs. Peterson hasn't stress-baked another 3 cakes. Once they were alone, Thomas sat on Lucy's window seat, patting the space beside him. She joined him, remembering all the conversations they'd had in this spot, about school, about her mother, about finding strength in difficult times. "I have something for you," Thomas said, removing a familiar velvet box from his jacket. Lucy's breath caught. Inside was the Patek Philippe watch, the one that had started everything 5 years ago. "Dad, I can't." "You can and you will." Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. "Do you know why Elizabeth gave me this watch?" Lucy shook her head. "She said time was the most precious gift we have, not just the hours and minutes but what we choose to do with them." He lifted the watch from its cushion. "When you found this watch, you could have used it to buy yourself a few months of comfort. Instead, you chose to return it, beginning a journey that would change all our lives." He turned the watch over and Lucy gasped. Below Elizabeth's original inscription was a new one. "To Lucy, who taught us the true meaning of family. Love, Dad." "I've been trying to find the right moment," Thomas continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mother raised an extraordinary daughter, Lucy. These past 5 years, watching you and Nathan grow, seeing you overcome every obstacle, helping others despite your own challenges, you've embodied everything Elizabeth believed in. Lucy wiped her eyes, careful of her makeup. I just did what Mom taught me was right. Exactly. And in doing so you helped heal this family. Nathan became the man his mother always knew he could be. The Foundation's youth programs have helped hundreds of kids like you. And I. Thomas paused, collecting himself. I got to be a father again, not just to Nathan, but to a remarkable young woman who reminds me so much of Elizabeth in all the best ways. He fastened the watch around her wrist. It felt lighter than Lucy remembered from that cold night 5 years ago. Perfect fit, Thomas smiled. Like you were always meant to be here. A knock at the door revealed Nathan, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Mrs. Chin says we'll be late if we don't leave now. He looked at the watch on Lucy's wrist and grinned. Finally. I've been keeping that secret for weeks. You knew. Lucy stood, arms crossed in mock outrage. Course I knew. Who do you think helped Dad get it sized for you? Nathan held out his arms. Now come here, valedictorian. Your big brother needs a hug before you make everyone cry with your speech. Lucy stepped into the embrace, feeling Thomas join them. 5 years ago, she'd been a homeless girl clutching a stranger's watch, fighting between survival and integrity. Now she stood held by the family she'd found, wearing that same watch as a symbol of how far they'd all come. Later, standing at the podium before her graduating class, Lucy touched the watch's familiar surface. In the audience, she could see the faces that told her story, Thomas and Nathan beaming with pride, Mrs. Chin dabbing her eyes, Miguel recording everything on his phone, Emily, now a good friend to them both, giving her a thumbs up. Even her old street friends, now successful graduates of their Foundation's programs, had come to support her. Time, she began her speech, is the most precious gift we have. Not just in hours and minutes but in the moments that change us forever. 5 years ago I found something valuable, but what I really discovered was invaluable. The truth that family isn't about blood or background, but about the choices we make every day to love, to grow, and to believe in each other. The watch ticked softly on her wrist, no longer a symbol of wealth and status, but a reminder of the night one choice changed everything. In its reflection, Lucy could almost see her mother and Elizabeth smiling, 2 women who taught their children the same precious truth, that the greatest wealth isn't found in what we own, but in who we become and how we help others. As she concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Lucy knew she'd found something far more precious than a valuable timepiece. She'd found her way home.